You know what I like best about school field trips? It's that we get a one-day opportunity to be out of school and just do absolutely nothing. When I mean nothing, I mean anything other than school. I know I'm not much of a traveler, but I'd rather be walking around in an area I don't know anything about than sit in class throughout most of the day. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with going on field trips as long as I get to skip school for a day. Unless the field trip itself is taking away more time than an ordinary day of school would. I'm talking about those special field trips where the entire class stays overnight. Now, that's where I cross the line. I've never really felt comfortable staying overnight with my classmates. A time where I get some sleep is a time where I don't want anyone around. And what's even worse is when they assign cabins to us, we get separated by gender. I mean, I understand why, but even as a boy, I don't feel comfortable around other boys. I'm not going to speak on behalf of every boy, because I know not all of them are the same, but based on my experience, they never shut up, which is why I try to go to sleep as soon as possible, so I could actually fall asleep, which I don't normally get if I'm sleeping somewhere I'm not familiar with. I've had to deal with those circumstances, and thankfully I may never have to experience that ever again since field trip days are over for me, which gives me the chance to look back at the several field trips I've gone to with my school and had no choice but to stay the night. Let's start it off with my one and only elementary school field trip that I had to stay for 2 nights. I gotta say, there were some really good highlights about the trip. For one thing, it was during my last year of elementary school, which was the time I had lots of friends to bond with. And also, it's not like typical field trips where we're on a bus on our way to our destination. We were going on a ferry. And no, it wasn't a cruise. I would know the difference, I've been on both. The thing is, it took a few hours before we were able to actually board it. On top of that, we had to get there early. It's like whenever we board the plane, we have to be there 3 hours earlier before being able to get on. Same situation here. On our way to actually board the ferry was already enough of an adventure for me, but inside had way more than we thought. There were some little shops around, along with a cafe, which was pretty nice. There were also some areas that didn't really get much. There was just a lot of cars. But the best part about the ferry was being able to get to the top and look outwards. It was windy. Very windy. I'd say we were on the ferry for a few hours until we made it. The area around wasn't as much as expected, just a wide area with multiple places to wander around. Forests, wide pathways, a lake, and a full section where all of our cabins are. Throughout most of the time we were spending it on activities. We've done lots of obstacle courses, practiced setting up fires, swam in the lake, and did some kayaking. It was fun. The most memorable moment was when the workers there were trying to be entertaining with some very weird songs. I don't remember what they were, but we were definitely into it. That entire first night was spent on reciting those songs and annoying the crap out of each other. Everything was going fine until that one night, the time where everyone goes to sleep. That was probably the most difficult night I've ever had. As I've said in the beginning, I need to go to sleep as soon as possible so I could actually sleep. And of course, it didn't happen. Everyone was still so loud outside, and even when all my roommates came into their cabins, they were even louder. I swear to you, they just kept going. Even when the lights were out, for what lasted for probably not even an hour, felt like hours. Endless talking, more stories. I just wanted to fall asleep and start the next day. Typically a situation like that would just be incredibly bothersome, but things were getting worse when I started overthinking their conversations. Before I go into it, was there ever a situation where in the dark, something like a pile of clothes looks like something scary, but it isn't? Yeah, that's basically what's happening here. The boys were all commenting on a shadow in the corner of the room and that it looks like a person. Then they started yelling more when they saw it moving. Saying that out loud sounds kinda stupid. Like, obviously it isn't a person, but it looked different at night. I did not see this pigmentation that the boys were talking about, but I was thinking about it and I genuinely believed them. I was scared. I was sweating, shaking, and I tried so hard not to move to make them believe I was asleep. It was a rough night. Second night wasn't so bad. At that point I was just over it. Overall, memorable moments, but thank goodness I am out of that experience. Until a few years later. During my last 2 years of high school, they insisted we go on an overnight retreat, which I admit was great, but I was not willing to stay overnight with my classmates. It's just awkward. They have to see the part of me that I like to keep private, which is getting all snug while I get into bed. Honestly, overnight this time wasn't as bad, but based on my past experience, I'm not taking my chances and I'm gonna go to sleep early. I was able to get some sleep, but I wasn't able to get it as soon as I hoped. Although, I was able to look asleep so that way my other roommates wouldn't bother me. They were getting into some weird questions that I didn't want to get involved in. They were like, guys, Ethan is asleep, we shouldn't bother him. And I thank them for respecting that. Unfortunately, it didn't help much because I can't sleep because I don't. Besides that, this was one of the very few moments of high school that I genuinely was happy. The place here had surprisingly more than I thought. There was a gym, a game room with a pool table, a foosball table, and many areas to wander. We spent lots of time doing group activities and got to hang out with my friend group and talk. There was even a campfire and we roasted marshmallows. But the most eye-opening part of this entire trip was the stone ceremony. It sounds weird, it's not. This was a once-in-a-high-school lifetime experience where I got to see everyone so vulnerable and truthful. Everyone was admitting each other's feelings towards each other and being incredibly grateful, using stones as a symbol of our connectivity. Everyone was crying, hugging. It was an emotional mess. I'll never forget that day. Although the night was a bit of a mishap, the stone ceremony made up for everything. My last, and hopefully my permanently last overnight field trip was another retreat, but during my senior year of high school. I wasn't too worried about this event this time, considering that last year wasn't that bad. Oh, how terribly mistaken I was. This wasn't my fault, it just had to happen on the most unfortunate date. A few days before the retreat, I got sick. Not horribly sick, but well enough that I can still attend. I did not want my sickness to get in the way of my chances to have a fun retreat. Everything else was very much expected. We did some activities and we had the chance to hang out during our free time. It was sweet. There was kayaking, but unfortunately I didn't have time to go, which I'm kind of grateful for because, to be honest, kayaking makes me anxious because I keep thinking that the slightest tilt off center will tip me into the water. Anyways, the most memorable moments from this retreat? There were a few actually. The first one, I don't even know where to begin. I was just walking across the dock with two of my friends and suddenly we heard rustling coming from a bush. What came out wasn't an animal, it was a boy in a camo outfit holding a toy gun. We weren't sure what he was doing, but he was talking about how we were annoying him early in the morning and it was driving him crazy, which made no sense. We weren't here until midday. And guess what happened next? He went up to me, gun loaded, and actually attempted to shoot me. And I thought playing along would amuse him. I actually fell down and acted like I died. He ran away after that, but my friends were definitely amused, so hey, I do have comedic skills. Another memorable moment? I thought that the stone ceremony earlier would have been emotional, but this one was good too. I got to write a letter that was going to be read to the entire grade. I was finally given the chance to speak my feelings for everyone to hear. I never really focused on how everyone was feeling. I was honestly super anxious that people would realize that I said those words. It was wholesome. Later after that, they actually handed out letters to all of us, which were messages from our parents. I had no idea my parents were involved in this, but it was so endearing to see such a sweet message. I actually shed a tear, no joke. You know, based on everything I've said, everything felt right. Well, it was, until I had to go to sleep. And I can't even blame anyone for this misfortune. I did this to myself. As I said before, I was sick. I was coughing so much and it affected me more that night. That was probably the worst night of my life. I literally did not sleep at all. I didn't want anyone to be bothered that I was coughing so much, so I spent the entire night holding in my cough. It was painful. I wanted to die. What a terrible situation that I had to put myself in. Thank God that's over with. Thank God it's all over with. I'm not sure why I have such a hatred for staying overnight somewhere else. It could just be that I've gotten too comfortable getting to bed in the comfort of my own home, and having to do it elsewhere does not make me feel safe. Or it could just be that I don't go on sleepovers very often. I just can't have a good night's sleep if I'm not in my own bed. What happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom. That sounded weird, but seriously, I don't want anyone in here. Get out!